a mythological deity as well in the Roman culture of one of the gods of sky, as they call him, in the form of Augustus. But again, I think in the world that we live in, 2020 hasn't been somewhat a pleasant year in many aspects. We've lost so many people, so many good people have passed away during the pandemic. So many people are still sick and severely ill in multiple hospitals around the world. New hotspots in Americas, in Brazil, all the way down to India and other regions are building up. So it hasn't been a very Walaikum Assalam. Idris Saab is online. Jazakallah khair for watching. Hope you're doing well. And inshallah, very soon we hopefully would be able to start some form of the congregational prayers that we used to have on Keith Road near to Idris Saab's house. Hopefully soon. At the moment, I think what I'm hearing is that all the community centers across the UK are still in a state of lockdown somewhat. So probably we won't be seeing any major return of normal activity in the community centers very soon. But hopefully over time, we will see easing out of lockdown restrictions as we have been witnessing across in UK, in the Nordic countries, even in America, in US. Many of the states have started to ease out many of the lockdown restrictions they've had. And again, as we all know that the severity of the coronavirus is really peaking out in some key regions. US is a new hotspot. Latin America has been suffering quite badly. Brazil, Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, all of those countries have also been increasing the number of cases that are coming in. And alhamdulillah, to a certain degree, countries such as Pakistan, even where there was a major risk initially, people were propagating a higher number of cases than what we've already witnessed on the ground. And I was reading in Dawn the other day that there is roughly about 77 to 78% recovery rate now, alhamdulillah, in Pakistan. So there are a few good signs, some really good positives coming out of the whole pandemic situation. And hopefully over time, we see more things becoming slightly more normalized. And then things start to brighten up in the future as we hope. I think on the other side, many are well aware that things are happening all across the world in different domains and different shapes and forms. And I think one of the interesting things that took place recently was this new warfare and the new idea of the warfare that is now entering the intergalactic space, if you want to call it this way, that I think US and UK have been accusing Russia quite recently, that Russia has been testing satellite-based missiles. So missiles that are not actually operated from any ground, surface, or air as such, as the normal case of different weaponry is out there at the moment, where you have surface-to-surface missiles like the cruise missiles, or water-to-surface missiles, the famous Tomahawk missiles that are being used by US in Afghanistan, for example, or the air-to-surface missile that are normally deployed by the planes or the fighter jets in different countries where escalation happens on the war era. But this seems to be a new development that US and UK are accusing Russia, that Russia has now started to fire out missiles from space stations. Why? It's still not confirmed in a way. I think both UK and US are making a claim that it is a trajectory, it is a weapon type projectile that was pushed out from the satellite that is owned by Russia. But if it does happen, then it is a major issue, and it's a major development that can be a kind of a new pattern, as you can see the analysis by Jonathan Marcus. He's one of the ex-military men at BBC, and he put it up recently as well, that if this anti-satellite weapon is really something that happens in reality, then this is a new era for in the kind of space mission that many countries have been sending out, and it can turn sour quite quickly as well. So again, I think as I mentioned some time earlier as well, that it is interesting how while the world is going through pandemic, they are still, Walaikum Salam, Soumya Nasir, so is online, I can see. Jalal Ajasam, AOA, everyone, Walaikum Assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well, Jalal Saab. and everyone else who's been watching here on this show as well. So again, as I normally share some things that are unique and different that are happening all across the world. We know in UK the issues around the pandemic and the lockdown have been discussed for quite a while. Things are easing out. There are a number of changes in restrictions that have been introduced quite recently, and as many of you might have seen, Prime Minister Boris Johnson announcing that he is aiming that UK returns to normality to a certain degree by end of December, by Christmas time. He's hoping that we don't see a second wave or a second peak of new cases for coronavirus, and things can start getting back to normal in essence. From tomorrow, 24th of July, as many of you might be well aware of it, that the face coverings and the face masks have been pretty much advised by the government in any shops, in any public spaces, and spaces like post offices and shops or stations. Wearing a face covering in public would become somewhat necessary, and there are certain announcements that up to £100 can be fined for people who are actually not covering their face, which is quite a stark difference. If you compare a few years ago, we've had a major issue of banning face masks for Muslim women who wear it for all on religious grounds and cover their faces. And there was this massive uproar across France, in UK, and many of the other countries. And now we are in a situation that, due to public health risks, face masks or face coverings are becoming a new norm. And from tomorrow in the public spaces in UK, many of you might be well aware of it. If you don't have any masks, you probably might need to stock them up now. Because if you want to go out, be in any public location, in shops or post offices or any other of these similar ilk, then you have to have a face mask. That's been mandated by the government as well. So again, I think it's a very different scenario in the world that we are looking at and how things are developing. Some of the things, I think one interesting thing, I was looking into it, and many of you might be well aware of it as well, is that the Arab Emirates have been really working heavily on their space technology. And it's interesting, we were discussing about the satellite or anti-satellite weaponry that Russia has been accused of testing recently. UAE recently launched their first mission to Mars as well. This is a first for the Arab world. This hasn't been ever done before. And this is probably the first ever time that any Arab state has invested so heavily in space technology, that Arab Emirates, they have first and foremost in the Arab countries been able to develop their space technology enough to launch their own probe to Mars. It is very interesting if you think about it, that globally every single major country is looking to expand beyond the bounds of the Earth and the skies that we live in. And many are testing many probes out on Mars. There was a famous rover mission sent out by NASA. India has been testing space technology. China obviously has been trying to reach out to Mars. And there is obviously discussions about recreating or doing again the landings on Moon that were done back in 1960s by the Apollo 11 mission as well. So again, this is something that it is becoming a new, I would call it pretty much like a status symbol on the international arena, that many countries are trying to beat each other in the space missions and really coming up with more and more new technologies that enable them to reach new heights and new discoveries on the space arena as well. And I think one other interesting thing I was looking through was the introduction of robotic birds. So many of you might be well aware of it, that there have been many issues about the flora and the fauna and the wider impact on nature, on birds. So many of the countries have been testing to see if they can develop any bionic birds or any automatic robotic birds that can carry out and pollinate and create that ecosystem that is often very much under severe threat due to global warming and some of the other issues of the similar ilk. So a German company, Bionic Swift, they've pretty much succeeded in creating a miniature real-life bird-type machine, I would call it. It's obviously not a bird. That it hopes that it will recreate the kind of environmental hazards and create an opportunity to have these birds roll out in a mass scale and create a different kind of environment on the skies. And obviously, as many of you might be well aware of it, that this view of testing flights on the pattern of birds with movable wings, it's obviously been tested on a very large scale as well. You know, the future of aviation can be a bit more efficient using less fuel or using less power of combustion as generally is used by the airplanes at the moment, if they can adopt something similar to a wings type motion that the birds can replicate out in the sky. So it is going to be interesting. They've launched a number of these robotic birds that are now tested across in different areas, and they can actually be controlled by a Wi-Fi in their flight patterns if you want to. So it is going to be an interesting exercise to see where aviation goes from if this new technology of efficient flying using wings type motion becomes the norm in the future as well. So again, I think it's something, as you all know, that there is no end to the innovative abilities of humans. We've been evolving for a number of years. If you imagine all the access to the technology that we have now, it is something that we probably never had 20, 25 years ago, or 30 years ago, or even 15, 20 years ago, I think. I remember when I came back here in 2007 or 2008, the norm was these telephone cards, and you used to buy these telephone cards, and you used to get a fixed number of minutes that you could use to call back home in Pakistan or India or anywhere else. And then services like Skype started to come in, that you could actually speak over Wi-Fi, voice over IP, as it was known, VoIP, to really create this differentiation in telecommunication. And now we are in a scenario that you can actually do live streaming of your whole life if you want to on a daily basis across any platform. You can be on platform like Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, use Periscope or Facebook Live or Instagram Live, and really replicate whatever you're doing to anyone in the whole world. Forget about just connecting with your immediate family or friends from far away distances. You can actually connect to anyone and everyone in the whole world. And again, it replicates and brings us back to the point that technology is pretty much an enabler. It is a tool, a medium, a channel, and it really depends on the purpose that you are trying to achieve with the use of technology. People can use it for good purposes. People can use it for bad purposes. And it is the power in your hand that whether you are able to utilize technology for the maximum benefit. It is such a supreme resource of creating better knowledge base in your head, creating so much access to information and power of news and analysis and coverage, data that you never had before. Or you can just use it for spending time on watching anything that doesn't benefit in the longer run as such. In a way, so it's a tool that we all need to be really careful about, and we need to be using it in the best optimal manner as well. So again, that's kind of a quick overview of a few of the things that are happening around the world and a few of the recent news items. I think as a key thing that concerns everyone, the coronavirus situation, as many of you might be well aware of it, it is slightly getting better in UK. The number of cases, number of deaths, that's also under, to a certain degree, in control, as they are calling it. No one really knows the real numbers because there's been a massive issue quite recently surfaced by the government that the numbers of deaths that were reported in UK, they were pretty much at a certain degree at a very highly inflated rate, because the methodology that was used to record those deaths was a very, very vague one. And it only counted anyone who suffered with coronavirus at any point within their life. And if they even did not die of the reason of coronavirus, they were still counted as death under coronavirus. I think a very good example that the Sky reporters, they recently used of this numbers methodology that the government has been reporting on was that if, for example, somebody had coronavirus back in February and they tested positive for it and they recovered from coronavirus, went back home, and say back in May or in June, they were walking on a street and they were hit by a bus or a truck and they passed away, their death would still be counted as a coronavirus death. And that's been a major flaw in the methodology that was recently pointed out by the government, that we are reviewing all the numbers and we reckon and believe that the earlier estimates are showcasing that up to 1,200 to 2,000 deaths that were actually reported as coronavirus deaths were probably not coronavirus originated or coronavirus impacted deaths, but were people who died because of coronavirus. Well, people who died had coronavirus at some point in their lives. So that's been a major concern with the health department and the Office of National Statistics, ONS, as well. And hopefully we'll be getting an update from the government in the coming days. Walaikum assalam. Faisal Bhai is online. Dijat Bhai is online. MashaAllah. Good to see you as well. So Jazakallah khair for listening. I know Nizam Bhai is with us, who speaks about the tafsir from Tafhim al-Quran and gives us the guidance and the perspective that we obviously all need within our lives to take forward. Assalamu alaikum Nizam Bhai. कैसे हैं? ठीक ठाक हैं? वालदा कैसी हैं आपकी? अब बेहतर। अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह। घर आ गए हैं अभी? घर पे ही अब तो? चले अच्छा अच्छा, अल्लाह ताला